On Twitter, I was chatting with this dude who just finished playing Link's Awakening on the Switch, which is a remake of this game, my favourite Zelda game, and anybody who says they can name a better one is lying. Anyway, the fellow PSP collector, link in the bio, asked the all-important question: is there a better remake than Link's Awakening? Well, let's take a look at what I consider to be the 5 greatest remakes of all time. But first, some ground rules. Remasters do not count. So Last of Us Part 2 on the PS5 does not count. However, The Last of Us Part 1 does count. I guess what I'm saying is for it to count as a remake, we need to take the seed from the original flower and grow a new flower, rather than repot the old one. Also, there will be honoured mentions for some awesome remakes that maybe didn't push the envelope as much as I would have liked. Well, let's get started. Resident Evil remake on the GameCube. Wait, let me try that again. Resident Evil. It just hurts my throat. Resident Evil remake on the GameCube. Fun story. Playing this game as a kid in the middle of the night had me so scared to leave the room, I opted to pee my pants and sleep in the corner. Graphics do not always make a game, but sometimes they do, and especially when it comes to horror games. Sure, the originals were scary in their own way as the jumble of polygons grabbed you. No, now they're scary for how uncanny they look. It's now an actual human being trying to rip you apart, and there's nothing you can do about it. The clock is ticking, your footsteps echoing, and you're being hunted. Terrifying. Each door presents new terrors that will follow you into your dreams. This game not only took everything the original game did and dialed it up to 11, it's so good they have released this version of the game ever since with minor adjustments. How many remakes can you mention where people rarely mention the original game anymore?
Chris, and now Wesker.
There's not much we can do.
It's important we have a Metroid game on this list, and no matter how much you argue with me, Metroid Prime on the Switch, no matter how many new assets have been added or old ones redesigned, is still just that, a remaster. It's in the bleeding title, which left me with 2 games, Zero Mission and Samus Returns, both amazing games for the exact same reasons. But I have to give it to Zero, which had to walk so Returns could run. If you haven't played the original game, then please don't. It's not aged well. And I could argue its sequel on the Game Boy has aged even worse. Zero's team reworked everything from the sprites to the music to the story and the music. That's right, music twice. Everything gels together and makes for a much more fluid experience than the original. Sure, you can say the same thing about Samus Returns too, so fine, they're both equal. These ones are fairly obvious and will pop up on any list. Fire Red, Leaf Green, Heart Gold and Soul Silver are shining examples of remakes being done right. They took their games from this to this. And I'm honestly not sure why the next logical leap from this was to this. Let's hope they bring back battling for the Silver remakes. These games had the music re-recorded, all Pokemon reanimated, new tasks to complete, everything was just polished with dazzle. And whilst I agree Fire Red and Heart Gold had their drastic differences to set them apart, I do stand my ground that these games collectively set a gold standard, get it, gold, as to what remakes should be. I don't know about other regions, but Final Fantasy VII in the UK is credited with single-handedly bringing JRPGs into popularity. Before that, it was adventure games, puzzle games, and mostly platformers. Now, I'm not saying there weren't any RPGs, I'm just saying they weren't popular. Now, how do you take a game that is widely considered to be the greatest JRPG of all time? I mean, I like the game too, but greatest? Come on. What we got is the game we needed, but not the one we deserved. Everybody wanted a one-to-one remake of the original, but they wanted Square to make it flashy. Ooh, they made it flashy alright, and sexy. But turn-based stuff? That's so 1997. Square pretty much said, if you want to play the original, then play the original. This game will be giving you a new experience in a familiar world, breaking the tradition that a remake needs to be one-to-one exactly the same, like for like. Square gave their team so much creative freedom over their most valuable IP, something that's rarely seen in this medium. Everything looks like how I imagined the game looked like when I played it originally all those years ago. It makes you wonder what Final Fantasy IX would look like, given the same treatment. I actually played both versions of Ratchet and Clank 1 year apart from each other, initially playing it on the Vita and then the remake on the PlayStation 4. Both versions are excellent and core blimey. The PS4 version blows it out of the water for obvious reasons, sure, but with subtle changes to the story, the different environments, it changes so much without changing much at all, keeping it familiar. A bit like FireRed, the whole way through was chef's kiss. Re-recorded lines, reanimated cutscenes, reworked story. It made the whole game feel so much tighter.
Tight, yeah!
Obviously, it was remade to coincide with a film that failed, and thus this game failed to reignite the franchise, but it all worked out in the end anyway. So, all in all, remakes are awesome and breathe new life into old games, making them feel new and giving you new reasons to revisit old memories. Sometimes they will rework the entire game from the ground up and only keep the story around. That is fine. The original will always be there for you to play. Oh yeah, and I've almost forgot the honourable mentions. Ocarina of Time 3D, a remake of a game that at the time nobody was asking for on a handheld device. Whilst it's a great game with reworked visuals, a new water temple and a re-recorded soundtrack, it just wasn't enough. We needed a new Ocarina of Time console experience. Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy. This game was going to be in the original list, however, the more I wrote about it, the more I came to the conclusion that this is a more frustrating version of the game to play over the original with shiny graphics. And finally, we have The Last of Us Part 1, which it exists, I suppose. It has no reason to be remade. The original still stood, but as remakes go, it's bleeding astounding if unwarranted. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, then please consider subscribing and leaving a comment and maybe giving the video a like as well. Thank you all very much. Have an amazing week.